Well, today we're going to talk about protesting. This is going to be just an orientation for anybody interested in protesting gender clinics. And we're really focusing on gender clinics right now because of the damage that's happening to children at them.
Okay, I have never protested. I feel really out of my element here. I'll admit I've always kind of thought of protesting as just, yeah, you just get some people show up and y'all carry some signs. But I think there's actually a lot more to it than that.
Yeah, and we want to just give this overview for people like you, Maria, who haven't ever protested but are so upset about what's going on that you feel, sort of a moral imperative to get out there and do something. And there are a lot of people who never thought they'd protest who are interested now in protesting at these clinics. So I'm going to just quickly give you an overview of why we're protesting. And the first one is that we want to peacefully and respectfully educate the public about the abuses at the gender clinics. And again, this is peaceful. We're not going there to yell and scream and chant and call names. We're going there to very peacefully express our concern about what's happening. We also are hoping to get press coverage. One of the reasons that people aren't up in arms about this is because they don't know what's going on. So if we can get a bunch of people in front of a gender clinic with signs protesting what's going on, it's more likely that the media will cover it. And if the media starts covering this, people are going to start asking questions and wondering what's going on. And we're going to have more success at pushing back about what's happening to these kids.
Well, that sounds like a really good idea. So, can you tell me, how do you plan for a protest? How do you get it started?
But as a protester, I would strongly encourage you to either go to the area in person and check it out or look at Google Maps. You want to sort of have a feel for the area. You want to know where you're going to park when you get there, where there are public restrooms around. And if you need to get out of there quickly, if for some reason tensions escalate and you just need to get out of there, or you have something else you need to do, that you know how to get away quickly. And a lot of this depends on what state you're in. There's states like New York that are extremely congested, and it's likely that you're not going to find parking close to the clinic. There are other areas, say in maybe Texas or Utah or Idaho, where there's going to be parking right there. So again, just to familiarize yourself and find where the bathrooms are, because that's one of the worst feelings if you have to use the bathroom and you don't know where everyone is and you're in an unfamiliar place. So if you do that, you'll just be a little bit more comfortable. There's also some planning that needs to go in, that things that you want to have for the protest so that when you go, you're going to be comfortable. You want to bring like some water, some snacks, some money, cash money. A lot of times there might be an instance where you actually need some cash money, and have it all in like a fanny pack or a backpack. Write down the name and number of an emergency contact in case for some reason your car doesn't start, or if you get lost, or if for some reason you're detained at the protest, you want to have somebody you can contact. So they're just some simple things so that, the day of the protest is going to go a little bit more smoothly for you.
Okay. Is there anything that I should be aware of going in, sort of for my own protection and the protection of those around me?
Yeah, I think that first of all, I'm going to go over some guidelines about how to peacefully protest because I always forget. I've been protesting since I was, a little kid, and so I sort of am very comfortable in that environment. But if you've never been to one, it can be kind of overwhelming. And so, first of all, I wanted to mention that you need to not block sidewalks or not block building access. And so if you're there with a group of people, stand in a line along the edge of the sidewalk so there's room for people to pass by. And make sure that you're in a safe place. You don't want to be by a road or where you're going to, maybe get pushed into the road if there's a bunch of pedestrians that come walking past. So just be aware of safety. Also be aware of, the buildings around you. If you're in a residential area where potentially people may not approve of what you're doing, just kind of keep an eye out for things. There is a possibility somebody could drive by and throw something at you. We had a protest in New York a couple weekends ago where somebody threw a glass of water on somebody. And so tensions can run high at these kinds of protests. And so you just need to be aware that there is a chance that somebody might be angry about what you're doing and they might throw something at you or they might yell at you. So just keep your eyes open and be safe. We try to have, everybody at the protest just kind of generally, looking around to make sure it's safe, and maybe even have a code word among yourself. If you see something that's dangerous, to let everybody know. The other thing that you want to do is not to engage with people. So verbally them, because it's too easy to get in a heated argument because emotions are running high, and that's not a productive thing to do. You know, people who are angry aren't going to be open to learning. And if somebody comes up and starts yelling at you, which is a possibility, I've had that happen many times. People come up and yell right in your face, and it can be really intimidating. And this is something, Maria, where I think you have some expertise. The best thing to do in that case is to validate what the person's saying, not to argue with them, not to try and convince them because they're not open to that, but just to let them know that you're hearing what they're saying. And I was wondering if you can give us some techniques, you know, to kind of de-escalate when somebody's really angry and emotional like that.
Well, I think when you're dealing with someone who's very angry, whether it's someone you know or someone you don't know, the calmer that you can appear, that will kind of de-escalate the situation. And I like what you said about validating what they're saying. Yes, I hear you. Yeah, that's a real concern. Yeah, I agree with you about that. um, to not get into an argument or a fight. And if it's somebody that you don't know, like you said, you're not going to win an argument there. But just making sure your face is pleasant, relaxed, your body language is pleasant and relaxed. And you don't have, the red face, the forehead vein throbbing, the clutched fists, just to kind of de-escalate by displaying yourself to not be a threat. Does that sound like the
Yeah,
right thing to do?
exactly. That's so important. And just to reflectively listen. So if they say they're angry, say, I can hear that you're angry. I understand that you're angry. And just to use those kind of words, they're validating. Yes, I can tell you're upset. But to not to try and argue, because again, that's likely to escalate things. Another thing is that there's a possibility that police will come just to check out the situation and make sure it's calm. It's really important not to have everybody flock to the police officer and tell them what's going on. So ideally, the marshal will have appointed one person or will take charge of that themselves to be the police liaison. So if an officer shows up, just to calmly explain what's going on. We're not breaking any laws. We're peacefully protesting, and I would suggest to follow what the officer says. It's better not to argue with a police officer. And as much as we might want to hold our ground and say this is our right to protest, if a police officer asks you to quiet down, quiet down. If a police officer asks you to move to a different area, move to a different area. This isn't about being confrontational. This is about education. And so it's really important that we come across as compassionate and kind and loving. And that brings me to another topic, which is the area that we're going to be protesting. Many of these clinics are in children's hospitals, and we need to be very sensitive to the fact that there are going to be children and families going in and out. So we need to think carefully about our signage and what we're saying at the protests. Depending on your area, it might be very appropriate to have a bullhorn and to, chant something. In some areas, that would be completely inappropriate. So just kind of gauge the environment that you're in. We don't want to alienate families and we don't want to scare kids. That's super important.
Oh, those are good points. I didn't really think about those things before. Those all sound like really good things to think about, many of which I haven't thought about before. What would be appropriate to wear to a protest? Should I dress up to look professional? What's the best clothing choices?
Well, and that's some of it's really up to you what you're comfortable in. I'd really suggest wearing what you're comfortable in because you're going to be standing there for a couple hours. So wear comfortable shoes, wear clothes that you're comfortable in. If that's a professional outfit, that's great. If it's a t-shirt and sweatpants, that's fine too. We're going to have signs covering most of what we're wearing. The big thing is not to wear anything that sort of signals that you're supporting some other cause, or bringing something that supports some other cause. So we don't want Trump hats. We don't want LGB flags. If you have big jewelry that is showing support for a certain belief system or cause, we'd like you to just kind of cover that up. If you have a big tattoo that, supports some political affiliation or party, we'd ask just that you wear longer sleeves because we want this to be focused solely on this issue. We don't want it to get mixed up with any other cause, any other political ideology, any other belief system. We want to show solidarity about this and that we can have, the left and right, we can have atheists and Christians, we can have Muslims all come together to protect our children. And the other thing that you want to think about is whether or not you need to come in disguise. The fact is that some trans activists might try to dox you. They might try to find out where you work. They might try to get you fired. And so if you are in a vulnerable position, or if you're a parent whose child is involved in this ideology and you don't feel comfortable being public about it, consider wearing a disguise. And I would suggest going to a thrift store and buying clothes that you never wore before so that you won't be identified. Get them a little bit loose so that your body form doesn't show. And consider wearing, maybe a wig or a hat and sunglasses. And right now we wear masks because of COVID. If for some reason a mask, mandate isn't in order when you go to the protest, you can still wear a mask. In fact, Partners for Ethical Care is actually selling masks if you want to get one to support Partners for Ethical Care. But you can wear, we don't want masks that have, some kind of political candidate on it or, any kind of political statement at all. Hats, t-shirts, they need to be very neutral. All of this is to protect our messaging so that when the press comes, they know exactly what we're focused on, what our message is, and that it doesn't get muddled with other ideas, other beliefs, other issues. Does that make sense?
Well, it does. And since I've gotten involved in this issue, I have worked with so many people and gotten to know so many people that I wouldn't have gotten to know before and that I might have really disagreed with. And if not for this issue, we probably would disagree on a number of things, whether that's faith or politics or lifestyle. And so I appreciated what you said about not wearing religious jewelry and not wearing political clothing or pins, because we should all be able to come together in a group, appreciate each other, support each other, and work together because this is so important. Protecting children is so important.
That's a really good point. I am just astounded by the variety of people that I'm now friends with that I never would have even met if it weren't for this issue. But this issue is bringing together people of, all walks of life, all political beliefs, all religious belief systems, and when we come together at a protest like this, it's really powerful.
What about permits? Do we need permits to do picketing?
Well, it really depends on what state you're in, and ideally, the marshal will figure that out. Usually, you can just Google and see what your state rules are. Typically, if you're on public property and you're not having huge numbers and you're not blocking traffic and you're not marching, you don't need a permit. And so, just make sure you or the marshal of your state checks out to make sure you're not breaking the laws because we don't want to get people arrested for breaking the laws.
What about things that I should bring with me? Anything that I need to bring?
Good question. And I kind of covered this a little bit earlier, but you really want to bring, a fanny pack or backpack with snacks, with some water, with some cash. The other thing that you might want to do is bring a change of clothes, either to change out of when you're done, or if somebody throws water at you so that you can change and be comfortable. I also suggest that you bring wipies in case, if somebody throws something and it gets splattered on your face or your hands, you want to wipe it off. Or just, if you're, sometimes it's hot out there in the sun and it's nice just to be able to wipe your face off. Um, and I think that that's also the other thing that I do recommend is to bring any medication that you need just in case you're delayed getting home. Again, it could be that, you're at the protest and everybody there decides, instead of 2 hours, we're going to protest for 4 hours. So you might need your medication. Or it could be that you get to your car and there's, for some reason you can't, there's a traffic jam and you can't get out. You want to make sure that that you have any medication that you might need with you. It's not a bad idea to bring some Tylenol or aspirin or something just in case you start to feel fatigued or get a headache or something. But otherwise, I think if you just have, snacks, some cash, some water, you're going to be in good shape.
Is there anything else that I need to do to get ready for protest day?
Well, I think it would be really good to charge your phone and to have contact information so that you can take pictures and videos and send them in real time to people who are going to be posting it on social media. People who have committed to share the video and images from the protest, because the more we can get that disseminated, again, that helps educate people. And if you can have, all that written down so that you can very quickly take a picture, send it to someone who's going to tweet it. Take a picture, post it to Facebook, and maybe even live stream if you have that kind of capability on your phone. Again, the more we can just keep pushing information out there, the more people are going to discover the really heinous things that are happening to these children at gender clinics.
Okay. I have one more kind of difficult question. Whenever I'm doing teacher trainings for new teachers, the thing that young new teachers are always concerned about is discipline and safety. What if a student brings a weapon to the classroom? And that's such an unusual thing. I almost want to say, don't worry about that. That's not the most important thing to worry about. But what about in a protest? What if somebody comes up and gets violent? What are your, how do you protect yourself? How do you manage that?
Well, and that's a reality. We live in a day and age where that could happen. I haven't heard of it happening, but it definitely is a possibility. Some of these activists, trans rights activists, have are routinely issuing threats against people, and it's most of the time it's just keyboard warriors who are trying to intimidate us. But there is a possibility that somebody could get violent, and so it's important for you to have communication with other people in your protest. And ideally, the marshal of the protest will have discussed with everybody who's planning on attending some of these techniques. But first of all, if you need to have a code so that if something happens, you all know that's we get up and we leave.
Mm.
If somebody says this code word, we're out of here because it's not safe. It's important to always be watching, and honestly, it's better to call the police if you're at all concerned than to not call when you should have. So you be overabundant, over concerned. If you see something that just doesn't feel right, just doesn't seem right, the police are there to protect you, and so utilize that. And I know that there are some states where people are, feel less comfortable about utilizing the police, but generally they're going to be there to protect you. The other thing is that kind of ahead of time, assess your own comfort level. What are you comfortable with? Are you comfortable with, people across the street yelling at you? Are you comfortable with someone, 20 feet yelling at you? Are you comfortable with someone coming right up into your face and yelling at you? So kind of determine where your comfort zone is, and let people know that, hey, if somebody comes right up into my face, I'm going to have to leave. I'm not comfortable with that. Or I'm going to have to like scooch behind somebody. um, it it would be great if we have some big strong looking fellas at the protest, but we don't always have that. Sometimes it's a bunch of small moms, and so you have to be aware that it's always a risk. Pretty much anytime you're out in public there's a risk, but when you're protesting you definitely increase that risk. I really believe the risk of somebody throwing something is much higher than somebody coming at you with a knife, because again, these are people who are, they don't want to get caught, they just want to get angry. And so if they throw something, they can drive away or run away, and that's typically what we see. So I would say your risk is going to be much more for those kinds of things, than for somebody coming right at you with a knife. But again, have those code words ready and be really prepared in case that happens. Make sure you talk about that with your other protesters so that you have a plan. Does that make sense?
Okay. It does. It does. I've learned a lot. Thank you for going through all of this. I feel much more prepared that I could join in a protest now than I did before.
And just remember when you're out there that you're on the side of truth. You are on the side of protecting children from being induced developmental delays, from being sterilized, from living with a lifelong medical condition. You are there to help the children. And I think that really emboldens people. I've heard people who were very nervous about going out to protest, but when they were out there, they felt so firm in their conviction that what they're doing is important. And and on the side of truth, that they felt they were ready to go out and protest again the next week. And I suspect that's how most people are going to feel after they protest.